Hello everybody and welcome to the video. My name is Brandon, and as you can see from the title of this video, I'm going to be going over 3 stocks that I'm buying in 2018. Now, let me start this video off with a quick disclaimer. This is strictly my opinion. And when it comes to anything with investing, you're always going to hear 2 sides of the story. And whenever you're making a decision for yourself, you have to factor in all of the variables, do some research on your own. And ultimately, never listen to one person's advice and run with that. And of course, always make sure to speak to an advisor or some sort of professional before making any big financial decisions for yourself. That being said, I have one more thing to point out. Although the title of this video says, stocks that I'm buying in 2018, that absolutely does not mean that I'm expecting these stocks to be the top performers of 2018. If you find somebody that tells you they know what the best performing stocks are going to be over the next coming year, you slap them in the face and you run the opposite direction because they are up to no good. When it comes to investing in equities, we have to understand that anything can happen. And to make a prediction like that, that is absurd. Over the short term, stocks are very, very unpredictable. For all we know, the economy could head into a recession. We already are on the back end of a very, very successful bull run. And over the next couple months, over the next couple years, it's not out of the question that we could see a bear market coming. And in that case, even the best of stocks would be down. And that's why, of course, it's very important that if you're going to be potentially needing this money, in the near future, don't invest it in equities. Only invest in stocks if you're coming in with a long-term view. So without further ado, let's get into my first pick for 2018, and that is Disney. Ticker DIS. Now, Disney is a stock that has been an absolute favorite of mine for quite some time now. I've been a long-term holder and I intend to hold this stock for many, many years to come. And I do think that the future is very bright for Disney. Now, for anybody that's been following the stock, you would have noticed that it's had a bit of a rough 2017. We can look back to about April to October of 2017, and the stock was down about 17%. And this was largely in part to the poor performance of their ESPN division. And yes, Disney does own ESPN. As we know, this field has been facing its struggles. ESPN has been gradually losing its viewers, its subscribers are down. The NFL, which of course is a big part of ESPN, the NFL as a whole, their viewership is substantially down. There's some reports saying there's the lowest numbers they've seen since 2008. And this poor performance of ESPN has absolutely been, the Achilles heel of the Disney company as a whole. And this has absolutely been reflected in the share price. Now, of course, this is just one aspect of the company. Disney is a huge media giant, and the rest of their media division, it continues to do well. They got the Pixar films, the Star Wars legacy continues to kill it. They obviously have their Disney Channel. And aside from that, they have, their parks and resorts segment, which is generating them a ton of revenue. In fact, we can look at some numbers here. Revenues are up 8% over the past year. They're saying a big factor to that is this Shanghai Disney Resort, which opened up in 2016. That's doing very well. And then, of course, you have the consumer products. So the Disney Store, the mugs, the blankets. These are selling all over the world. It is just a very all-around dominant company, and it has been for many, many years, and it will be for many, many years to come. Now, why do I think that this stock is such a great buy for 2018? Well, 3 weeks ago, they made the big announcement, it was all over the news, that Disney would be acquiring shares of 21st Century Fox for $52.4 billion. Now, if we think back to earlier in 2017, Disney mentioned that they're going to be pulling all of their content off of Netflix and that they're going to be starting up their own streaming service, which they're targeting for 2019. Now, whether this is a good decision or not, only time will tell. Netflix is a very, very dominant player in this field. They have a lot of control, and you could make the argument, why would you want to go up against Netflix? But if we look at some other companies, this kind of seems to be the route that they're going. I know Amazon is doing somewhat of a similar thing. They have their Amazon Prime viewer streaming service. And if there's anyone that has the firepower to go up against Netflix, it's Disney. They already have such a strong lineup of content between their Pixar animation studios, Walt Disney Pictures, Lucasfilms, which of course is the Star Wars division, the Disney Channel, Marvel, and now on top of that, they're going to be adding in the content from 21st Century Fox, so things like the X-Men, the Avengers, the Simpsons. They are really making a big push to expand their content library, and what that shows me is that the company is very, very confident in the direction that they're going. And I think we can all agree that as a society, we're absolutely heading towards this on-demand or subscription-based viewing model and kind of getting away from the old traditional TV broadcasting. And it's really good to see Disney adapting to this changing environment. So if they're able to position themselves properly, which to me it looks like they're doing, I think they'll be in a great position to profit. And let's not forget, this is only one aspect of their business. They're still generating revenues from their parks and their resorts and their consumer products. I mean, Disney is a big, big company. And as of recently, the stock has actually kind of picked up. Over the past 3 months, it's up about 12%. And even the ESPN sector seems to be doing a bit better. I'm reading a report here that says in Q4, ESPN has returned to the top viewed cable network and that its audience rose 13% year over year. I'll link this, it's a really short article, but I'll link it in the description. But overall, I do like the direction that the company is heading. I like what I see. I like the fact that they're trying to get into this, on-demand viewing space. I think Disney is a great long-term hold. They pay a nice little 1.5% dividend. Nothing huge, but very consistent. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how things play out over the next few years. But I'm willing to take the leap on Disney. So for 2018, this is the first stock that I'm buying. Now, the second stock that I think is a good buy for 2018 is a bit more of a controversial one, but it's the company General Electric, ticker GE. And for anybody that's following the stock, it has seen a bit of turmoil over 2017. Looking at a one-year number, this stock is down about 44%. That is an absolute slaughter. I mean, considering that this is one of the big blue chip stocks, you don't see them dropping this much, especially when you factor in how good the markets performed over the past year. The S&P was up 22%, the Dow was up 28%. This stock has definitely been lagging out a bit, and it would absolutely win the award for the 2017 Dog of the Dow. Now, when we see a stock that's down this much, we have to ask ourselves, is this temporary and do we see value here? Or is there truly something wrong with the fundamentals of this company and should we stay the hell away? Now, reality is you're going to hear arguments for both sides, but something is definitely going wrong here. However, I do think that 20 years from now, we'll be able to look back and say this was nothing more than a great buying opportunity. Now, for those of you who don't know, GE is what we would call an industrial conglomerate. So it is involved really all over the industrial sector. There's all kinds of segments of their business within their company. They're very big in like the power plants and generators. They're big in the aerospace. They're big. They provide the jet engines for some of the big airplanes. They're into healthcare, transportation, renewable energy, lighting. They really have a vast portfolio of businesses within the company. And this is actually one of the reasons people saying they might be struggling. It's almost like they're too diversified. But the company has been facing losses pretty much all across the board, but especially in their power division or their power business. And this happens to be their biggest section of their business. I can read a little report here. It says GE's performance was weighed down heavily by its power business, which saw profits decline 51% from $1.3 billion to $611 million. So their earnings have been dropping. They've been missing their estimates. They lowered their guidance going forward. So the company is absolutely having its issues. Not to mention there's a lot of turmoil going on with their management and what they're calling their corporate attitude. But what I'm getting at by saying all this is that the drop that we're seeing in the share price, it seems to be justified. So all of that being said, why do I think that this stock is a good buy? Well, there's three main reasons, and they all kind of lead to the same consensus. The company understands that it's struggling, and they're making efforts to turn things around. So I mentioned that they have shaky management, right? And a lot of people would argue, well, they've done a pretty poor job. Well, in August of 2017, they appointed a new CEO, John L. Flannery. And this guy's been with the company for well over 20 years. He's led, multiple areas of the company. He played a very big role in their healthcare division and was previously the president and CEO of GE India. So very involved with the company, and he's been put in charge of this turnaround. And one of the big decisions that the company made back in November was to cut their dividend in half. And as we know, one of the last things a company wants to do is to cut their dividend. They pretty much avoid it at all costs, and this is actually only the third time that GE's ever cut their dividend. But what this shows us is that the company understands that they're in a bit of a pickle. They understand that they can't afford to be paying out that much capital, and that they need to really be focusing on getting their company back on track. And I'll bring up an interesting clip over here, which shows a few companies that decided to cut their dividends, which resulted in some very, very good performance the year following.
General Electric cutting its dividend by 50% on Monday, sending shares tumbling. But if history is any indication, the cut could actually be a buying opportunity. According to S&P Global, 4 of the largest dividend cuts ever outside of the financial crisis were ConocoPhillips in 2016, Abbott Labs in 2012, Pfizer in 2009, and Kinder Morgan in 2015. All but one saw double-digit gains over the next year. Now the question is, does this mean GE is a buy? Welcome to Trading Nation. Today we've got Chad Morganlander from Washington.
So yes, companies don't like cutting their dividends, but sometimes it's necessary to help get their company back on track. Now on top of that, last month, GE announced that they're going to be cutting 12,000 jobs to slash down on some costs and ultimately try to boost their bottom line. So what this tells me is that the company is making moves in the right direction, and that's what I like to see. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, well, is this company going out of business? I mean, even after losing 44% of its value, it is still the most dominant player in the industrial sector with a market cap of about $160 billion. Having a look here at their Q3 earnings report, they're still generating $30 billion in revenue. I mean, the company is absolutely hitting a rough patch, but are they going out of business? I don't see them going out of business, no. So personally, I do like what I see with GE. I have high hopes going forward. I mean, even after the dividend cut, the stock still pays a decent dividend at 2.5%. So I'm confident that this company is going to turn things around and that this is going to be a good long-term hold. Now, one thing that I want to point out with GE is that this turnaround, it may take some time. And again, this video is not picking stocks that, in 2018 are going to absolutely be the number one killers. These are stocks that I'm buying in 2018 for the long run that I think have good value now. I do think that because the stock is down so much, it really is presenting a good form of value here. So when they're finally able to turn things around over the long term, we'll see some great success. Now, there's one more thing that I need to point out. If you're considering taking a position in GE or any stock for that matter, I would absolutely recommend, easing into your position. But especially with a stock that's been this volatile or this much of a downtrend, it would probably not be wise to just jump straight in. You'd probably want to invest maybe a third of your position first or maybe a quarter, give it some time, see how things go, and then slowly build up to your full position. Now on to the final stock that I'm liking for 2018, and I decided to go with the tech company. And I really am a big fan of, the Googles and the Amazons and the Apples and the Microsofts. I think they are going to do very, very well. But I decided to shift things up a little bit. And the third stock that I'm buying in 2018 is a company called Tencent Holdings, ticker TCEHY. And this is actually one of my favorite stocks. It's a little gem that I came across only last year. I only got into this stock about midway through 2017, but I'm already up, I think 50 or 60% on my position. The stock is on an absolute tear. It would absolutely be considered a growth stock. They pay a very, very small dividend. I think it's 0.14%. They basically don't pay a dividend, but I do see very good growth prospects going forward for this company. Now, for those of you who don't know, Tencent is China's largest internet service provider. And maybe you've never heard of the name of Tencent, but you've probably heard of the app WeChat. It's basically China's equivalent to WhatsApp. But I'll tell you, it's much more than just a messaging app. You can do all kinds of things. You can order food, you can purchase movie tickets, and you can hail cabs. You can hook up your wallet. You can do all sorts of things. And it really does have a wide reach of applications for the consumers. And I'll tell you a funny story about how I came across this stock. So last year I went to Taiwan. It was my first time ever going to Asia. It was really awesome. I had a really good time. But while I was there, I wanted to sign up for a little gym membership or like a 2-week gym trial. So they were really nice there. I was talking to the guy, I'm filling out the form, and I get down to the bottom section where it has your contact information. So I put in my address, and then there's a section that says Line, that's how they contact you. And for those of you who don't know, Line is Taiwan's equivalent of WhatsApp, or it's their messaging app. And I looked at the guy, I said, I don't have Line, and he's like, what? He's like, how do you talk to your friends? I was like, I text them or I use iMessage. And it was just insane, the amount of people that use Line over there. I mean, they don't text. They use Line, and their entire life is based off of this app. And I mean, you go to the malls and there's mascots and there's people lining up to take pictures with these Line icons. It was insane how well adopted this this app was over in Taiwan. Now, of course, with Line, that's Taiwan, but I can just imagine how big WeChat is in China. So really, really a dominant force, tons of adoption when it comes to the Asian population. And I think if the company makes the right moves, I mean, they can definitely profit off of that. Now, on top of that, they also have a segment of their company called Tencent Games. Maybe you've heard of the company Riot Games. They make League of Legends. I know that I've personally Spent way too many hours playing that game, and I've spent far too much money on RP over the years. So yeah, just a very, very big technology company, big in the mobile gaming sector, the video game sector, which I think is going to be a great place to invest your money over the next coming years. Esports, as we know, is gaining an insane amount of popularity. I mean, you're seeing all of these big companies that are trying to get into the space. I know recently, even NBA teams like the Golden State Warriors, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Houston Rockets, they're all looking to back these professional esports teams. The industry is generating all sorts of revenues. I mean, I'll read a report here, which I'll link below. It says that, they're projecting for 2017 revenues of, $700 million, and by 2020, they're expecting those numbers to rise, to upwards of $1.5 billion. So definitely a space that I want to be in, and I think that Tencent is in a great position to capitalize off this. Now, normally I don't like to invest directly in Asian companies. The laws and the regulations, they're just so different over there. And typically what I do to get my international exposure is I invest in, big US based or US domiciled companies that have lots of business outside of the US, so a lot of international exposure, and that's how I get my exposure to the international markets. But that being said, I am a big fan of Tencent Holdings. They have such a command over the population over there, and if they're going to be able to continue to monetize what they're doing, I can see them doing very, very well going into the future. Lots and lots of growth. And I can quickly just bring up a couple pictures here of their stock quotes. So here we're looking at a 1 month number up 13%, 1 year number up 126%, and then a 3 year. I see lots of growth coming from this stock. We can just slip over here to look at their financials. The company is absolutely just on a tear with their revenues. From 2015 here, we're looking at $102 billion. Next year up $151 billion, and now the trailing 12 months, $190 billion. So the company is absolutely growing. I think there's a lot of good prospects going forward, and I am personally buying this company. So those are my 3 stocks that I'm buying for 2018. Again, I'm purchasing all of these with a very long-term outlook. For all we know, the markets could head south tomorrow or a month from now or a year from now. So absolutely, if you want to be investing in these stocks, you have to come in with a long-term mindset. So thank you everybody for watching my video. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. And if you haven't already, give this video a like. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more content. And I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.